community enterprise growth plan. I feel slightly disappointed now, but I just wanted to spend a few minutes just giving everyone a bit of an update on the situation with dormant assets and where that is all going. Obviously, I'm sure many of you are aware that the dormant asset scheme has been an enormous funder of the industry we're all in through big capital and through access over the last few years. So just wanted to give you a bit of an update on where things are and where they've been. So just going back to basics, what is the dormant asset scheme? So if you have lost your, I was going to say checkbook, no one has a checkbook anyway, but if you've lost, if you had sort of £2.50 in a bank account when you left university or something like that and forgot about it, after 15 years, funds that have been laid dormant in bank and building society accounts are, and if they can't reunite that money to who it belongs to, are made available to an organisation called the Reclaim Fund. Their job is to have another go at seeing if they can find the owner of that money, and only when the bank's given up doing that and the Reclaim Fund have given up doing that, that funding is made available to good causes. It's a voluntary scheme. Banks and building societies have been doing this for about 10 to 12 years. And it is also something that's pretty cool that happens in the UK. It doesn't happen in many other countries, and is something that we should be quite proud of. But this is a rough scheme from the Reclaim Fund on how it works. But essentially, if you find your checkbook down the sofa, proverbially, you always get your own money back. But there is a certain amount of money that will never get claimed, and that's what's been made available for good causes. And in England, and I'm afraid I am going to be now quite England biased because it works differently in the other home nations, but in England, for the last decade or so, that good cause money, which has been around £1 billion, has been made available to 3 causes. Social investment wholesalers, specifically wholesalers, are the organisations that can receive dormant asset money. It's gone to a range of youth projects that's managed by Youth Futures Foundation, and it's gone to a range of financial inclusion initiatives as well. That's managed by Fairfield Finance. Obviously, Holly and colleagues are here from Fairfield Finance. So that's been the picture in England over the last sort of 10 to 12 years. In 2022, there was new legislation to expand the scheme. This has been in the offing for a while, but finally made it through Parliament in 2022. And what this meant was that the scheme was expanded beyond just banks and building societies, which have been the only participants in the scheme till that point, to bring in a whole range of new asset classes. And it works a little bit differently in these different sectors because of the nature of how one would define dormancy, but essentially it's the same kind of idea. And now, so insurance policies, pensions, investment and wealth management accounts, and funds in publicly listed companies are all now eligible to be part of the scheme over the coming 10 years. And the estimate is that around the same amount of money, again, slightly under £1 billion is the figure that's been quoted. It may be slightly more than that. Obviously, this is an estimate at this stage, will flow through the scheme over the coming decade as well. So this was the legislation was all about expanding the scheme to these new asset classes. And then when that act passed Parliament, government also committed to consulting on what the good causes should be. Again, in England, it works differently in the other nations. And so that consultation was part of the process. So after the act passed, a group of organisations came together to really make the case that, yes, social investment had received quite a lot of dormant asset money over the past decade, but there was still a huge amount of work to do. And we really needed to make the case to government that while lots of infrastructure had been built and lots of markets had been demonstrated to be viable, there was still a huge opportunity to drive finance into the communities that needed it the most, to really solve some of the challenges that still exist in the social investment market, many of which we've been talking about over the last 36 hours. And so a wide range of different organisations came together. There were many more that were consulted and talked through this process to define an initiative that we called the Community Enterprise Growth Plan. And this was really making the economic case for government and for the country as to why continued support for social investment was critical. And there were 3 kind of foundations to that campaign: extending the availability of small, flexible, affordable loans through the tool of blended finance, developing the use of enterprise grants and innovative incentives to support enterprise development in the sector, and then supporting not-for-profit community lenders, supporting SMEs in particularly deprived communities around the country. So a huge amount of work happened sort of end of 22 or middle of 22, end of 22 to build the case around the Community Enterprise Growth Plan. The government consultation closed in October 2022. The Community Enterprise Growth Plan defined an ambition of £500 million over the 10-year period to deliver on these kinds of priorities. So in March 23 this year, the government published its consultation response to that consultation and has now defined a fourth cause. So all of the existing three causes, youth, financial inclusion, social investment, wholesaling, remain causes. And I think, you know, that is actually a pretty significant win in terms of social investment wholesalers. It would have been very imaginable that, you know, stakeholders would have said, oh, kind of, you've had your turn and it's time for other causes. So the fact that social investment wholesalers continue to be an eligible cause, I think, was a significant win. A fourth cause was added, which is community wealth funds. There's been a significant campaign to develop a community wealth fund model, which I won't go into now, but that became a fourth cause. And within the consultation response, in the section on social investment wholesalers, there were kind of four themes that government said they had heard reasonably consistently in all the consultation responses and would consider when making decisions about future social investment wholesale funding. So those are widening the range of funding models available, overcoming inequalities in access, some questions around the wholesale model, and the affordability of social investment. I think in reality, probably the issues there, 3 and 4, are possibly in the responses that government received are sort of slightly related, but those are the things that government said it would look at. It did say also that in terms of concerns with the wholesale model, it understood some of the pros and cons, but it decided not to change that definition, and so it will continue to be through social investment wholesalers that this funding is made available. And then finally, government committed to publish a statement of intent on the proportions of funding across those cause areas in this year. So in 2023, that was what they committed to in March. So at this point, we knew kind of social investment wholesaling was still in the tent and in the club, but there wasn't any definition around how much, over what time period, what for, etc. And so kind of the latest position is that we've been working closely with a whole range of different organisations over this year to really put some more detail on the bones of that sort of three-pronged vision that we'd articulated in the campaign, and colleagues and I spoke to many people in the room during the course of this year to identify some of those priorities. What we've learned since then is that government has established some parameters around this. So we now know they're going to make a 4-year allocation, not a 10-year allocation, and they've got circa 350 million to allocate across all of those causes for that first 4-year period. So we've been preparing a response for government, really essentially making a bid into that pot. What's happened sort of took us slightly by surprise, to be honest, but in September, they've actually come out ahead of when they said they would, and decided to split that £350 million equally into the 4 different areas. So that will work out around 87.5 million for social investment wholesalers over the period 24 to 28. And what they will now do is sort of fill in some of the policy priorities within that. So there's now a bit of a kind of conversation and co-design process with DCMS, which is the relevant bit of government, to within the context of that broader vision and within the context of the things that they established in the consultation response, to identify exactly what the priorities are going to be for that first spending round. And that's really a kind of co-creation process between the social investment wholesalers and DCMS, but obviously we'll be continuing that conversation and really taking on board a lot of the content and input that we learned about over the summer. We're not crystal clear yet on exactly what level of detail that will go into. Obviously, there are some political dimensions to this as well, although the Dormant Assets Scheme is not meant to be overtly political in its objectives. Obviously, ministers will have views on priorities as well. So there's a bit of an ongoing discussion on exactly what that will look like. And although these are figures that are published on Gov.uk, you know, they're not yet formal spending directions, and so it is possible that these things could change, although we don't expect them to. So I think if you'd asked me 2 years ago, would we have got sort of this continued level of support from dormant assets, I would have been pretty happy. Obviously, we've had, a very ambitious vision within the Community Enterprise Growth Plan, and clearly this amount of funding is not going to deliver on the breadth of that vision. So I think the next step really for us, once we can secure a particular set of priorities here, is to consider as a sector how we're going to fund the rest of that vision and what the opportunities are for thinking about using this as a catalyst and other sources of funding to really deliver on a broader vision for the ecosystem over the coming period. So more work to do. We probably don't have time for a lot of questions now, but obviously I think people know where I am and how to find me, and I'm really happy to answer any questions either kind of when the session finishes or after the event. But yeah, that's a kind of broad update on where we are at the moment. Thanks very much.
And welcome everyone to the last panel of the gathering, which, there it is. So we've been having a lot of discussions over the last 2 days, and also Seb sort of alluded to, what we might be looking forward to in the next 4 years, in the next year. So in terms of the last panel today, I think it is quite fitting that we are looking towards the future. What should the future look like for social investment? And I'm just going to read the little bit of brief we have on this, which is to examine the opportunities and challenges for the sector in the run-up to a 2022 general election and beyond. A week ago, one of the co-founders of Pathway Fund, Stephen Bediako, referred to the time we're in right now, sort of from now up to the next election, as an opportunity of the generation. And I've sort of, stolen that phrase and used that a few times. So I think it's quite befitting to look at the future right now before we wrap up. And obviously we don't know what the future looks like. We can't say for certain what the future looks like. But what we have today here is this amazing panel who between them sort of engage with all the different spectrum of stakeholders in the social investment space, and I think can share a lot of really helpful insights with us to sort of continue this discussion, get some food for thought, and move forward into our own engagement or our own ask from the government and from policy. So just I don't think our panelists really need an introduction, but I am going to just ask them to very quickly introduce themselves as they answer questions. We have Maggie O'Carroll from the Women's Organization, Anna Shield from Big Society Capital, and Andrew O'Brien from Demos. I'm just going to ask you one sort of introductory question and then open the floor to other questions. So what would you say? And also, hi, I'm Swati Pujari from Pathway Fund. What would you say are sort of the top things that the government should deliver to enable the growth of the social investment sector in an impactful and equitable way? So what do you think are the asks of the sector, from the sector to the government? And also, almost like a flip to that, what would you say is the offer from social investment sector to the government?
Hi. So yeah, I'm Anna from Big Society Capital. I should also caveat this with saying that I'm an investment person, so my advice on public affairs strategy is something which we probably take with a pinch of salt. But there are others who are probably more qualified to give that. But I'm actually going to start with the flip of your question, because I think it's quite important we start with the offer, actually, in this period of what can social impact investment offer to government. We're going into an election where I think it's pretty clear from all the sort of music coming out that there is not a lot of money to go around. So actually, I think, and I also think we're going into it with, despite all the challenges and some of the things that we still have to work on, actually increasingly compelling evidence of what social impact investment can deliver. And I think that comes down essentially to three key things. I mean, firstly, simply that there is evidence of being able to reach people and communities and tackle issues that other models can't. And there's a range, plethora of examples of doing that. Whether that's across specific issues reaching vulnerable people, tackling housing issues, or increasing the reach, for example, some of the work that the Access, everyone's done through the Access Foundation in terms of reaching into communities with higher deprivation that have not, other sources of finance really don't come close to. So I think there is increasing evidence of that. But I think coming back to that question of where's the money coming from, the other thing that there is evidence of actually is the ability to leverage in and bring in other sources of capital. And we talked in the kind of opening session yesterday about the growth of the social impact investment market to 9.5 billion. And that's, off the basis of dormant assets, which is considerably less than that, actually. And clearly that's not just been about dormant assets, it's been about the efforts of many others. But just in terms of that multiplier effect of how much more capital can be brought in to tackle these issues through social investment at I think in that constrained resource environment, that is going to be important. I guess there's a sort of third thing, though, that I think is really important that maybe comes to what government can do, is that I think public-private partnership, bringing lots of different types of capital and sources and organisations together is not new. It's been something people have been trying to do. That sense of being able to bring it together with purpose, to convene partnerships that are genuinely driven by a belief around the outcomes, and actually by that fundamental desire to drive and do better, is something perhaps that is unique to the social impact investment market. And I think that's something that government can play a much greater role, actually, in creating a long-term enabling and supportive environment for how that can thrive and go on. I can talk to more concrete things. I think you were looking for something concrete, but maybe I'll stop there and let others comment at that point.
Hi. Well, as a social enterprise that's used and deployed pretty much all the kinds of social investment that have been on the market, I think there are a number of things that the social investment market needs to be probably thinking about at this stage. I think number one is the fact that there's a need probably for a more nuanced set of products. It's still pretty homogenized in terms of approach and product. And I think the target audience of those products is where they need to start from in terms of need. We have got a situation where investment is not drawn down by both ways of counting, women being one, and also particularly blackness minorities and stable communities. So I think the product, I would advise to go back and revisit your product line. And I think the other thing is around the pipeline. How do you support pipeline into arriving at your door? And I think that has been an area that has been weak in the social investment arena for quite some time, and it still is not, hasn't been addressed effectively. And I think that you're going to have to relinquish some power and influence in relation to that, and also some of your resources in order to do that well, because it needs to be independent and objective in order for the process to be truly legitimate, but also really get proposals that are that have a truth and also have been challenged before they arrive at your door. So I think that there is an opportunity there in terms of product and approach and process. And dare I say, a more macro issue that I think you'll have to, or I think we all have to address, is that we have a tsunami of difficulty attached. I know my colleague here mentioned about reduced money. And I don't know how many times I've heard that in the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. Surprising, it's true that maybe the last person who talked about the money doesn't grow on trees. And surprise, surprise! There's a lot of money floating around. I think it's about the prioritization of money, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's about where is the actual investment going, and who's it going to, and who's it benefiting. And And here brings me to the point of, at the moment, we have a variety of markets that social enterprises deliver effectively to. And more importantly, the other thing is that COVID-19 pandemic actually demonstrated how powerful the social economy and social enterprises were in delivering hugely important services in delivering and creating social impact and actually saving lives to boot. Unfortunately, I think what we have seen is we've seen a situation where we now have had a turn of government policy to devolution. And whilst I like the idea of local control, I don't think it really is working particularly well for women student groups. Because I think what we have is we've got a passporting of resources going to local government who are already stretched and struggling, and who are not really involved in the enterprise or economic development sphere. But however, are now tasked with resourcing and ensuring that services are delivered locally. In my view, and speaking to many organisations of social interests up and down the country, our market's going to fall away. It's going to disappear. There is social investors are going to have very, very great difficulty in finding people to invest in. And that's the problem. So you need to look after your market, and I think you need to be lobbying for a little bit more of a distributed model of partnership prosperity, what we're talking about, in terms of involving social economy and private, rather than just relying on public locally to develop and implement initiatives. And finally, and just in terms of influencing, yes, we're all involved with the two as an organisation and as a collective, are involved in influencing with the shadow government and even the current government, regardless of whether them being initiatives. Now, I'll say a couple of things to that. One is an evidence base and a strong one. We work very closely with our academic community in order to have a strong evidence base. So we use practice and evidence that is verified. And that messaging, obviously, we use a variety of entities. And I think our friend here from Glenmouth might be, and the think tech world are actually a very useful cohort to deploy as well. But I think our colleagues at Pioneer Post, etc. So I think there's press, there's directly to MPs, there are directed to elected representatives. But I do think that we have got infrastructure that is a powerful infrastructure in terms of our fintechs that I hadn't thought about until you were mentioned. So thank you for that.
It's always good when people do marketing for you without doing it themselves. What should the sector ask for? I mean, we've got community enterprise credit plan, and we've recently got to mention the FYI Commission as well, which Social Enterprise UK did, which has a number of ideas. I think the sector is bursting with ideas and mechanisms that government can employ to invest in the sector. So I think the offer, the offer we've got is pretty strong. I think the evidence is going to work. I completely agree though, I think we're good on the investing side of it, but for me, I think the big weakness over the past 13 years of this government's tenure has been far too much focus on what I would call the supply side, not much focus on the demands. But essentially, if we've got more social enterprises growing with stronger revenue streams, there'll be a demand for capital, there'll be a payback of capital. We haven't done enough, really, apart from the initial first few years of coalition government, we're trying to reform public service to get more social enterprises into delivery. Not enough done to open market opportunity now. I mean, the probably biggest exception to that has been, again, quite my former employer, Social Enterprise UK's by Social Corporate Challenge, which was supported by the Minister in Cabinet Office, but they haven't invested in that directly. It's more been a sector effort. It's been, it's credit to the social enterprise sector, social investment and other partners who have supported that work. But we probably need a new way for that. And I think, again, I don't see many ideas that element of the sector. What are the new market building initiatives that are going to create demand for investment? And then that investment could probably be paid in the cycle. I mean, that's a great benefit of social investment is the ability to multiply both in terms of the initial investment coming from different sources, the state, private sector, social enterprise, but then the repeated investment recycling of that. So we need to perhaps maybe put our thinking caps on the sector around the market building. I think in terms of the opportunities coming up, and I can say this because I am a conservative, so I say, I mean, it looks like we're on the Labour government, pretty big one, majority potentially. So I think it's wise for the sector to be pivoting and looking closely at that, and also frankly, I think the Conservatives have given up thinking about this topic. They are in survival mode. They just they're looking for a core vote strategy. There's not really big ideas. There's not going to be revolutionary pushes to reform public services, to reform the economy. It's going to be an offer of stick with us because the other one can't trust us. That would be essentially the offer. So from a policy perspective, there isn't a huge amount of engagement. Although on the flip side of that, I would say the dying embers of the government, we never know quite what might get out of it as well. I mean, there are pockets of money lying around, they'll be desperate to spend it, ministers will think about their legacy, and what am I leaving behind? So there might be opportunities for us to kind of reactively respond to and perhaps create some kind of partnerships with this government. But I think at a kind of strategic level, they're not thinking 5, 10, 15 years ahead. I think Labour are thinking about that. Their problem is they don't have the economy and vision. I go to endless discussions with people in Labour, and I thought Keir Starmer kind of got ripped apart by the reduction 3 questions on the economy, which is a bit embarrassing for people that we can vision. I mean, the first question was, you're not going to fund public services unless you grow the economy. And he was kind of like, yes. He was like, well, how are you going to grow the economy? He was like, well, once the Tories are out, they want to invest in the UK because Labour will be in government, there'll be new, fresh optimism. And they were like, isn't that just wishful thinking? And then what if it doesn't happen? He kind of couldn't answer the question of what they would do if there isn't that more investment coming in the country. So, I think him and his team are acutely aware they need a proper economic plan for the UK, and they don't know what they're into. Partly they know what it is because I think they're scared as to where that leads them. The more you look at the UK's economic structure, the weaker it becomes. I mean, you're absolutely right. When there's money around, we're not doing anything. When living standards are not improving, we are producing less than we should be in the country compared to our peers. Our balance of payments sort of kind of takes back to the 60s and 70s, but we're importing way more than this and exporting way less of what the world wants. As a country, we are becoming poorer. And to quote Mark Carney, we're living on the tongues of strangers, and that's the real fundamentally the problem. How do you do that? You need to kind of revive community, you need to kind of rebuild the productive capacity in the UK and especially reskilling the country, spreading opportunity places in the UK. So I think we need to fit ourselves with that vision. I think the evidence base is really important, but what I've learned in my career in the sector is politicians and civil servants only listen to the evidence that they want to hear. If they don't believe you, you can give them 150 pages of evidence with all the numbers worked out, case studies galore, and they'll go, yeah, I want to about this thing. So we've got to engage in that battle for ideas. I think the opportunity with Labour is that is still, there's still a bright piece of paper there to write down what we think we need to put that in. And the other element I would say on the market side is that, Keir Starmer, sort of gone on the radar a bit, but he's announced 100,000 new startup businesses in the UK in his third 5-year government. And he also said he wanted to be taught with social enterprises included in that as well. So we're thinking roughly proportionate to the economy currently. That's another 5,000 to 6,000 social enterprises incorporated. It's up to you guys. You're going to be the ones that have to help them to deliver on that ambition. So there are things like that in engagement. It's also going to double the size of the cooperative sector. They've announced again their part conference. Now, depending on how you double it, it's either 40 to 80 billion turnover, which is probably a bit difficult to do in 5 years. It was going from 3,600 to 9,600 to 20,000 cooperative. That's still a hell of a lot of businesses to create. Again, there's no plan for that. You will have to produce a plan because Labour will produce that, and civil service will produce that either. So there are opportunities for the sector, but I say the one takeaway I would have here is, what is the social investment sector's answer to that fundamental economic challenge which we're facing, which is that the UK is turning into a developing country from an economic perspective. We have very weak fundamentals in the UK economy. How are we going to right that ship? That will be the laser-like focus of the government. I mean, Keir Starmer basically said he's got 5 missions, but only one's really important, which is growing the economy. So unless you guys in this room can come up with a powerful narrative for how you're going to help to achieve that, you're probably not going to get access to the people. So I will be focusing my efforts on that, and then looking at those contextual tactical wins and things like startup governance and corporate sector and developing some plans.
I was going to open up the floor to questions, and I am going to do that, but I feel like there are a lot of questions that have also come to the floor from the panel. So yes, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, or if you want to respond to some things that were just said by the panel, or start a dialogue. Please, any questions or?
That's really interesting. Thank you, all of you. I think the sector has a massive role to play in some of the things that were spoken about. Big housing targets, decarbonisation, transition of the economy, and social enterprises and co-ops. Big part of that supply chain. And so I could see quite an obvious and compelling argument at the domestic level. Are we exporters to your last product or not?
It's hard to know. We don't really have the data. I mean, I think the last I remember from reading my state social enterprise survey is that social enterprise are more likely to be exporting than SMEs. So, we are a bit more export focused. I'm not sure why that is. I think some of that is partly because of the makeup of the sector. It is more diverse, and I think more diverse businesses tend to be much more globally looking. They have relationships with diaspora communities, marginalised communities, many other parts of the world, and they're looking to change the global economy, the UK economy. So that naturally makes you a bit more outward facing. So I think it's a good story. But definitely, it was one of my regrets that I wasn't able to do when I was at Social Enterprise UK. There didn't do more to make of that story. It was fascinating, actually. We spent ages trying to get through to the business and trade part of the UK. And we had meetings and so on. And then we just wrote a letter to them about the export side. Within days, they wanted to have a meeting to talk about the export opportunities for social enterprise. So, unfortunately, the bloke, Mike Free, and got reshuffled very quickly. So that was the curse of my time at SUK. But every time I met somebody, finally got through to them, they were always getting reshuffled. But I think what that story tells me, and I think Labour will be similarly interested in that, is that there is an acute focus on export opportunities when it comes to UK business. And I think the sector probably has a good story to tell, but don't know exactly what the UK is. And it would be great to do the work around that. But yeah, I think that would be really strong.
I think you can hear me, can't you? I think it's got a huge opportunity. I think there are a lot of social enterprises we export, we work internationally. In fact, we will probably be dead in the water if we weren't working internationally, quite frank. What I would say, though, just going back on the point you made earlier, of course, you have to make compelling arguments, and rather than just the data. But the data is important because the data is the thing that actually will trip you up in the end. So it is hugely important. I think the other thing is that while politicians move along, our strategy has always been get the civil servants, because the civil servants are there after them. They're there all the time. Now, whilst there is still a movement of civil servants, I think what we've seen much greater impact as a social economy organisation, and also in politics and economic development social enterprise. This is that, in actual fact, these are the kind of things we're all interested in the same thing in terms of, and we've defined it as 4 pillars. Productivity. We'll help with productivity, we'll help with zero carbon, and we will also help with digitalisation. They're the 3 fundamental challenges. And the 4th one is actually about equality, diversity, and inclusion. And those 4 pillars, if you take one of those things, the table kind of falls over. And effectively, that has been crucially, and it's underpinned by evidence external to ourselves, but it's one that actually has covered all the main areas that we've had. All the, I suppose, the main policy areas that we've been trying to convince government of. Some remain, some news, etc. But I do think that those areas they're the main transitional areas going forward.
And just on that point around diversity as well, so very quickly, the story's got a sex on. It is of the economy's only good story to tell. Actually, when you look at the number of women-led businesses businesses in the mainstream economy, it's kind of stalling the kind of exceptionally 19% businesses. In our sector, really parity. Hopefully by the end of the decade, it will be parity. And similarly on black and minority led businesses, the sector's doing far better than the rest of the economy and better than the charitable sector. And coming back to this point around productivity and growth, the UK has 6 million businesses today. The pool of, frankly, people that look like me to what businesses, we kind of exhausted that pool. The next challenge would be how do you get more women-led businesses? How do you get more black-led businesses? More businesses led by people from a minoritized background? And the only game you have is this sector. If you can put a really compelling argument across, I think, to Labour around that. And it also appeals to some of Labour's values, which is much more aligned to this gender than I would say the current government. I think there's also a really strong angle of the kind of policy opportunity there as well. But, we have to then put in place a measure to deal with that. Things like, supporting things like pathway funds and some of the other recommendations that came out of the Warren Commission. We have to look at some of the market building and investment in infrastructure work, which has probably not had the focus to really make that case. But I think we're actually right in that fourth pillar. I think there's a huge opportunity set if we can get it together.
Hello. Yes, as part of getting that right, Goldman Sachs said a few years ago that they wanted to create 10,000 small businesses. So they went out and did it. And then they sponsored Labour's SME Sunday at the Labour Party conference and kind of got a lot of face time with senior ministers as a result. What is the panel's view on more aggressive methods of growth, such as, for example, mergers and acquisitions, thinking about asset management practices? Just want to throw a little, because if we are going to come up with the answer to accelerated growth for the social economy, is there a role to play for these other techniques that have had so much success in the private sector?
Absolutely. The answer to that, absolutely. You see the cooperative movement in Ireland, for example, internationally, in terms of the farming cooperatives, in terms of credit unions, and these are hard-nosed and huge entities, and they were done through mergers and acquisitions, and also a membership, a powerful membership as well. One of the areas, though, is that they did it through collaboration with the sector itself. So I think, beware social providers, social investors, providers, and hosts. I do think that there is something about the us and them department, but in actual fact, working in partnership with the social enterprises themselves can bring diversity, innovation, and also a better product for you, and also gives you legitimacy and authenticity when you're making your arguments. But I think I wouldn't use the word aggressive, to be frank. These are well-trodden tools, business tools, and they're perfectly legitimate tools. It's not aggressive takeovers, etc., etc. This is about where it makes sense to come together in order to be able to grow. And we need them all. We need the small, local ones, and we need the national, international, and huge ones. We need those anchor-based programs. So I'm fully supportive.
I think I'd say echo that. There's lots of different versions of mergers and acquisitions, which are driven by lots of different factors. There's survival sometimes, that can be legitimate and that can be needed. There's obviously different things which are more about empire building and power and different elements of that. Ultimately, if it's potentially about enabling organizations to achieve the best impact over the long term, to build their own resilience, to do more for the constituents they serve, then absolutely that's got to be part of one of the routes to creating that impact. And I would completely echo the sentiment that there's a room for all different models and scales, I think, of business, and it's about having that dialogue around where do they deliver on some of these different goals. What's clearly challenging when you don't have a long-term view of what the kind of the system's going to be around you, and it's difficult to plan for that. So some of the kind of mergers and acquisitions, maybe in the housing association sector, we've seen over the last few years, has been a little bit driven just by a gradual ratchet of funding downwards. Some of that may lead to some good outcomes. I'm not going to prejudge how those will work, but some of them maybe are not coming from ultimately decision making that is being guided by how to deliver the best outcomes for our tenants. Some of them will be. But it's quite short-termist in terms of how they may be thinking about some of those decisions. And it's been really difficult to be anything other than short-termist. And that's part of what we need to come, I think, from whoever the government is a sense that there's a long-term buy-in for the role and contribution that the social economy can play in achieving that, and a sense that actually the use of full suite of government tools, if you like, that they deploy in many other elements of market making, are also available to, and if possible, adapt to and tailored to what the social economy, the social enterprise sector and social investment can bring to that.
I think, with that, I think the challenges are, I mean, so there are some, the employee ownership trusts, which the consent demonstrated, which, wasn't meant for a new way of employee owned business, and essentially being built into the idea of kind of shareholder capitalism. We want to create a mechanism for that to employ a life employee ownership trust and want to do that. But the indirect impact there has been a new way of employee owned business that we created because it's created a tax efficient model to offload their business. And with our aging population, there's a brilliant report by New Economics Foundation called Cost of Unleashed, which was many years ago now, but it kind of made the point, I think, that the roughly the turnover is fine around 200,000 business owners a year in the SME sector. So, we get half of those or 10% of those to, convert into social enterprise or cooperatives. You're talking about 10,000 businesses to start getting involved there. So it's a pretty powerful tool. I think employee ownership trust is a model like a way of doing it. We don't have a social enterprise trust. We don't have another kind of non-employee owned version of that. And that might be something you could be looking at forward. I think where I'm probably cynically a bit more worried is around the kind of social wash and green wash of this merchant. Social enterprise are incredibly valuable, I think. People in the private sector recognise that there are many ways you can motivate people to buy products. One of them is obviously quality, the other is price. And then the third one is the kind of social impact. And you convince people that your products are more socially and environmentally impactful. You can pay more money for those, be more loyal to those brands. And that's where you've seen a kind of huge growth increase in B corporations and others. But you also see big businesses snaffling up these B corporations and social enterprises and putting them into their empire, for one of the better phrase, in some business. And I think that is a worry for our sector. We're in this valley of danger where we are becoming, we know the model works, there is growth opportunity out there, but we're not big enough that we can't be swallowed up by other organizations out there. And I think that's where social investment has a critical role, because it's having access to capital enables the social enterprise to be more independent, plan to back themselves rather than treating that they have to kind of fold into a corporate entity. But I think we also have to be kind of careful and also think through our theory of change. I mean, there are many social entrepreneurs who I talk to who say, that is success. We can change the current behavior inside and kind of merge and grow with them, and that's impact and that's success. And maybe that is. I suppose I'm slightly the other side of the equation where, I feel like we need a structural rewiring of the British economy and British business. And I think social enterprise is critical as an alternative to the kind of, I would say, the kind of failed Victorian business method, just focusing on profit alone. And that makes me a bit nervous. But I'm all for aggressive merger and data practice when we're turning into social enterprises. I'm slightly worried on the other side that people might be looking at us, looking at their lips and going, really valuable assets out there and need to be picking up. So yeah.
Well, I think you touched on sort of the fact there's been a focus on the supply side, I guess. But I'm not sure I totally. I think we still have a huge challenge of spending some of the capital that we need to see to tackle some of these problems towards impact. And I think a question for us here is what role government can play actually in incentivizing or sending a signal or creating the routes for more of that to happen in a more meaningful way. So, that's partly, so in a way, there's the risk of one direction, which is that social value leaks out through the transition of social business models into the kind of mainstream sector and gets dissipated and diluted in the process. I guess our challenge is to find a way in which we can bring some of that, driving that, harness that towards social impact. And what sort of mechanisms are needed in order to do that? And there are tools and there are products and there are different things that perhaps can sort of signal what is important in terms of bending for more of that kind of larger flow of capital actually towards what we've been talking about, what social enterprises and social investment can deliver.
We need to do both. I'm not saying that ignore the supply side, but the social investment impact investment that which one of the big side capital demonstrated increased ninefold over the past 13 years. The social enterprise sector has not grown ninefold in the same period. So there's a much more accelerated growth on the supply side. I think that's because government has put a lot more effort into that. I still think there's a hell of a lot more we need to do. I mean, I don't want a 9-10 billion pound social impact investment sector. I want 100, 200, 300, 400 billion pound social impact investment sector. However, when you talk to social enterprises, there's, breaking down barriers to build their business, to grow their markets, to grow their revenue, to enable them to pay back or to take on more. There really hasn't been any policy interventions in this for a long time, and systemic level.
Yeah, absolutely. And market making is where we're in trouble, I think, and it's going to get worse rather than get better. Because effectively, social enterprises sometimes are really fitting in that space where, there's market failure for public services they're not able to cope, or they can't afford to, or are not responsive or agile enough. It's that space where, there's innovation, there's entrepreneurial endeavor, and there's a legitimacy because it's coming from the community in whatever geography or otherwise. And so when it's been proven time and time again that they're, effective. What we do have is we seem to have a regressive nature at the moment, where it's now going back into this idea of everything is being hyper-localized. However, it's sticking to the public sector as opposed to the social economy sector. So if market making is, as I say, is a real risk at the moment, because the vast majority of resources are and expend will be either being helped, be it through any of the major funds, levelling up funds, UK SPF funds. They are going to local government or in absolute or ICBs, integrated care boards. That's the matter is these guys are under pressure anyway because they haven't got enough resources to do their day job. So what are they going to do? They're going to look over there and say, we'll have that. Thank you very much. And the problem is that by having that, it absolutely puts social enterprises in an unenviable position, because effectively the market that we could compete for has been bypassed, it's been handed over, and there's nearly monopoly over here. That, in fact, that is the word, monopoly. There's been a monopoly created by public sector entities, not probably, intentional. The market is dying. Up and down this country today, it is dying. So whilst you're thinking about your product and service, and you should, and we wouldn't be here without social investment, we wouldn't be profitable, we wouldn't have money in the bank, none of that would have happened. But the reality is that, 2-3 years down the line, I'm looking at a pretty grim, we're looking at our international input, because in the UK.com, unless there is a real change in how devolution and how government decides to spend its money, I'd be better off being over in the United States with a affirmative action program around, guaranteeing at least 10% of all federal spend being allocated to the minority debt. Because today, your local council have access to most of that resources in our government. And they're spending on the house plants. So here you go. Beware.
So we're at time, and I have two people who have raised their hands to ask questions. What I'm going to do very cheekily is to ask both of them to be very quick in asking their questions, and I'm going to use their questions as the closing question for the panel.
Yeah, my question was, I suppose over the past few days, we've heard a bit about an accountability for the communities that social investment services serve, and that those conversations, in comparison to this conversation, feels very like in the nitty-gritty, and this conversation feels very like uphill. So my question to you is, what should the future of social investment look like in terms of accountability in the communities that it's supposed to serve? And also, what is, I don't believe that these conversations should be disconnected. So what is the connection between those two conversations?
Okay. Sorry, I've lost my voice. Two things. One, I've recently became British, so I'll be that champion from the Great Britain. But 10 years ago, when I started my social enterprise, it was the British Council social enterprise group that really supported it.
But British Council has shut this program, which is very sad because I think social enterprise and social investment is actually where the UK has a lot of great things that it has done, and it can be used as a lever to really showcase the rest of the world. But our sector here is very insular. So what can we do to get people more excited about sharing our lessons learned internationally and use that as campaigning, right, for the government? And I think the second thing I want to encourage us to think is the future for social investment can only exist if we have a different future for capitalism. We need to reimagine capitalism. I haven't heard the C word at all these 2 days. And I recently met someone from the US Foundation who's called Senior Director of Reimagine Capitalism. What a cool job title. I think we need that, matching that piece with there are people in this country talking about the new economy and all that. So how can we link up with people really reimagine capitalism?
I'll go through the first one. Accountability. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I just think we've Seth mentioned and kind of references before an asset. There's a lot of growth in the social investment market that we've learned to come from. Part of it was obviously being fully capitalised investment in the kind of private sector. And I think, ministers taking their eye off the ball, basically. And, it's a democratic institutions, government, local authorities combined for it. So I think monitoring that and make sure it's going to places that represent those groups in those units. And I think, for various reasons, Brexit, government turnover, elections, all that stuff, I think over the past few years, they've not been I think the new minister, the current minister, Stuart Andrew, I think is an exception to that rule. I think he is actually quite switched on and engaged in sensitive so many issues. But I think ultimately, the power imbalance I can do, where essentially you've got on one side people who've got capital, on the other side people who don't have capital and gone for it. There's always a natural power imbalance, and that's where democracy comes into that process, because there is a power that is greater than capital, and that's democratic power, because the state is still the most powerful force in world history. It can do what it wants to do. If the British government tomorrow decided it wanted to restructure the social investment market and put X, Y, and Z, it could do that. It could find a way to do that. I could put their resources into that, or regulating, or make holding institutions accountable. It's choosing not to do so is a challenge. So I kind of, maybe that's my bias as a kind of Western thinker. That's kind of where I focus on my effort on that is, how do we get ministers and certain officials to kind of switch back onto this and realise that they do have some agency. They should be using that to try and speak up to those groups that often are not getting to the table and hold that power. I think on the global Britain point insularity, it's a really difficult one because I think on the one hand, like I said, we've got a great story to tell, I think, around exports and the outward-looking nations, etc. However, all policymakers will tell you that kind of globalization is dead. That's that kind of 90s vision is gone. We're in a much more insecure world. It is more insular. Every country wants a competitive advantage over everything else now. This period of, rising tides of liberal votes. I think policymakers, not just Conservative, but Labour as well, everyone accepts that debt. So what people are looking for is, where's my country going to get its competitive advantage? And I do think that the social enterprise sector and the purpose of business movement and social impact business can be one of our secret weapons in that fight to put again, can we talk about the global race, to win the global race? The UK needs to come up with something different. I think we can be a different sector. But I think we need to get policymakers to see that. So it's a quite nice trade. I think I wouldn't, if we talk too much internationally, there'll be a feeling like the kind of it's not a special thing. The UK is kind of not, haven't got a advantage there. So kind of we've got to talk about ourselves as a world leader, but also still make it feel like it's a secret. You can unlock it. We can get progress. That would be my advice. But that's why I have to do. And the final bit of reinventing capital, I agree. And I'm sure I've upset a few people in Labour about this, but I thought it was funny is that Rachel Rees produced a paper this year called the New Model, the British Model, and there's nothing in it. It basically was policy stability, support banking, and industrial strategy. That is not a model for the I think they know we need a new model. They need to be an investment-driven model, it needs to be a productive-driven model, it needs to be one that tackles inequality and spreads it more evenly throughout the country to the community. We all know the model we need. But the means to do that doesn't mean tackling the fundamentals. Business needs to be restructured, investment needs to be restructured, tax needs to be restructured, the state needs to be restructured. And unsurprisingly, policymakers are really nervous about that. And as I say, going back to my point at the beginning, the UK is in a really tricky economic situation. We're in a weak position. Look what happened with Liz Truss. She tried to go for growth, market slapped her down, she's down off there 6 months later. So they are worried about that. But fundamentally, you are right. You're not going to see the level of growth we're looking for unless we fundamentally tackle those issues.
Yeah, ask you both to make very quick responses to this, because we are already out of time.
I'm going to try I always try to tie it together. I agree, it does feel like a different conversation, and I've been reflecting on that actually in terms of thinking, how do we respond to both challenges, if you like, and how do we connect them? So I think they are intrinsically connected with what's ultimately wrong with capitalism. We need to be both looking to ourselves and saying how can we do things differently within what we're trying to do, while looking at how we can also shape and influence the wider forces that are out there. That involves a constant feedback loop, actually, of evolving things, challenging ourselves, learning from it, but then taking that challenge and learning back out to those others and saying, how can you support us to do more? We're already doing some things that actually no one else is doing, frankly. We could do so much more of that with your sport. So it's that constant sort of dynamic, I think, of having to ask the hard questions. I think it's what you sort of, asked right at the beginning of really all of this. Recognise where things need to be addressed and shifted, but at the same time recognising we're existing in this much wider system, which is in quite a different place in terms of how it's thinking about it, and we do need to bring someone with us and keep them moving forward. And I think that's kind of the essence for the reimagining capitalism, that it needs to build in far more of that accountability, it needs to build in far more of that sense that it's for people, that it's to deliver on improvements in people's lives. We need to keep demonstrating and scaling the approach in different kind of ways whilst continuing to evolve and say we can always be better and we can challenge ourselves around what we need to do. Sort of slightly high level answer, trying to tie all of those things together. But
I think accountability systems are broken. I think, in terms of how that's impacting on people that are already disadvantaged within our communities up and down the country. It's quite shocking to see. I think that we've moved from, it's a them and us situation rather than actually sort of and local democracy isn't working. We're civic leadership is really poor in many parts of the country. It's dysfunctional. And people, women, Black and ethnic minority communities, disabled people, they're normally my top three of losing out, and people that are sort of economically disadvantaged. How do we become, well, we could start by being accountable to one another within, with both that shared set of values and social justice of trying to help social enterprises and vice versa. So I think that's the place to start from within. But I do think that there is a problem with the accountability structures, and I would like to see far more guidance being given by governments to local arrangements. And I would feel, and we're asking for that. And I think in future with Labour, whether they have ideas or whether they don't, we have to give a few ideas to them, and we are. But I do think that's a critical thing. It's a very important question, accountability for growth in the country. As for the international, it's so important. The scheme that you mentioned was so important. We worked and delivered on that ourselves. And it was a game changer. And it always saddens me that we have a situation where when stuff works, actually, oh no, we'll have to change the name of the trouble stuff to do that. We'll have to have a new idea. And I have no answer to that apart from the fact that welcome to Britain.
We're a bit over time, but I think we're all okay with giving 10 more minutes to the panel to having this conversation. So thank you very much to all the panelists, and thank you all for joining this. And I think final statement. Andrew said something that I tried to remember, and now I'm struggling to remember. we can all be change makers, or we can all be
Yeah.
something like that. Yes, so I'm going to leave you with that final bit of statement from Andrew. Thank you so much.
And I appreciate we're running 10 minutes late, so I will make this very, very quick. But a few exciting things to announce, a few reflections. I hope you all enjoyed the conference. I certainly have. And I just want to say a few thank yous. I won't go individually because it's mostly to everyone. All of the content was co-curated. Every single panel name, suggestion, almost everything was a suggestion from attendees. And registrations for people that wanted to attend. So thank you basically for all of the content. Thank you also to all of the speakers and moderators who took a lot of time and energy and effort to put together their panels and share their experiences. Thank you to all our social entrepreneurs that have come. Because I know it's often draining and annoying and difficult, and we really appreciate you being here to have that voice in the room, which is so important. Thank you so much to all our volunteers. From Barry Cadbury and the Pioneer Coast for helping us as well. So I've probably forgotten someone. Sounds like a thank you speech for an award, but could we just have everyone and the whole room a clap for and I knew for someone, the more than minutes, wonderful ladies at the back of the room. So don't forget to take a look and take a picture of that before you leave, which nicely summarises everything that we've been talking about. And then I want to move quickly to the wellbeing protocol, which is actually the exciting bit that you don't want to miss out. And we have a top 5 ideas, which we will follow up with the Connect Fund. And I can't say we will 100% fund them, but I can say with as much certainty. I did take the chocolate fountain one out to ensure that I could give it that certainty that I will fund all these ideas. But the top 5 ideas that come out are the facilitating Black Brilliance. That's from Georgina at Bud Leaders and Sumerian. The second is the patient flexible capital from market scale to enable demand-led products from NPC and Aliyah and Tribe Capital. The third is the exploring innovation opportunities for mutual returns. That's from Emma Back at the Equal Care Co-op alongside Bates Wells and Cotty Kane. And then the fourth is the exploring social impact in charities specific. Yeah, in full time. That's from the Iris Foundation and Youth Main Street. So if you were sick, don't worry, because we may be able to have some conversations with some of the others down the list. We don't want to miss out on all those ideas. But yeah, that's just to say I'm going to continue emailing you and annoying you. It's not the end. So I'm going to keep emailing you about the survey to ask you how you found the event and hopefully get some ideas for next year. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.